On this podcast episode, I'm going to share with you the method, the strategy what I do to uncover all my child's needs and what I did to uncover the needs of the kids that I worked with as a therapeutic provider for 10 years. One of my kids is autistic, and all the kids that I work with, they are neurodivergent as well, either autistic, ADHD, or they have some kind of diagnosis, PTSD, um, OCD, ODD, you name it. Even if you don't have a child with diagnosis, every behavior communicates a need. So if you understand what your child needs, you will be a lot more effective addressing any behavior that comes your way, that is presented to you, because you would not be putting out fires and trying to extinguish the behavior, but you will know how to address it from the root need. And once you address it from the root need, you will transform behavior from chaos to calm peacefully and a lot easier. Sorry, and faster. Hello, my name is Marcela Collier. Welcome to another episode of the Parenting with Understanding podcast. I am your host. I'm a certified parenting coach, and I am the founder of HIC Parenting Education Agency. My team of coaches and I are on the mission of helping parents stop reactivity like yelling, snapping, spanking, shutting down, so they can become secure parents and parent their children with peace. If this is the first time that you listen to our podcast, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. If you've been listening to this podcast for a little bit, that lets you know that, yeah, that lets me know and lets you know that you've been enjoying this content. And I would ask you to write a positive review. That will help us get to other parents who need this message, who want to raise secure children, and who want to break away from reactivity. So open the description of this podcast episode, leave us a hopefully 5-star review, and that will help us get to more parents. Okay, so let's talk about how to uncover all our children's needs beneath their behaviors. Because when we see a behavior, just think about the behavior that pulled you to click on this podcast episode or on this class. Remember that behavior. Is it the hitting? Is it the following you around all day? You tell them what's wrong, and then they don't tell you anything, but they keep on whining. Is it that the sibling fighting? Is it that the bedtime stalling? What is that behavior that keeps you up at night? And you're like, okay, I've tried everything and nothing works. What's wrong? All behaviors communicate needs, all of them. According to research, to Dr. William Glasser's research, he found that all behaviors communicate a need. Behaviors are adaptive or protective functions that helps people communicate their needs, either to adapt to a circumstance, to a need, or protect themselves. And that's why they use the behavior to communicate the need, looking for that protection. That's according to Dr. Mana de la Hook. She's a researcher of this topic of needs linked up to behaviors. So there was a kid, his name was Morgan. This was a story from Dr. Mana de la Hook in her book, Beyond Behaviors. So his parents were puzzled because he was a child who was growing up in a loving environment, a stable home, a stable family. He had like kind of like the setup for being a child with no behavioral problems. But he was having a lot of behavioral challenges, especially at school. He was prone to meltdowns, he was controlling, he was disruptive in class, and he was bossy with peers. And behavioral strategies were not working, meaning the 5 minute timer, the reminder to be kind and share with their peers, or you need to raise your hand before talking, remember to be in your seat, or calm down breaks, even reward charts. Nothing was helping this child improve this behavior. But then it was very confusing for the parents because they were like, he doesn't have a bad life. We give them all his needs. He's in a stable home. He's not a stressed out kid, if that makes sense from their perspective. So what was really happening? Is it that Morgan was a rude problem child? Is it that Morgan was a child who just would be too strong willed? Or what was happening with Morgan? Well, when Dr. Mano de la Hook started working with them, because she specialized on not just behavioral strategies, she's a developmental specialist. She looks at what's beneath the behaviors, which are usually needs, stressors, things like that. And from there, she develops a service plan to help improve behaviors. So she started asking a lot of questions, and I will give you a breakdown of a 4 step system for you to uncover needs. But when she went through that, through her questions, she noticed that Morgan was a sleep deprived kid. Even since he was a little baby, he had a lot of colic, and then that led to sleep disruptions, and his sleep cycles were all jacked up, and they stay a little jacked up for the rest of his childhood up until now. He's 7 now, or 9, 7 or 9. I don't remember. So this was a child who was waking up multiple times in the middle of the night. This was a child who, with poor sleep hygiene, the parents used to drive him in the car until he fell asleep. The parents used to put a screen in front of him until he fell asleep. The parents just delayed bedtime until it was very late in hopes for him to just be so tired that he would fall asleep on his own. So he was having a poor sleep hygiene. He was having challenges regulating his sleep cycle all the way since he was a little baby. He didn't learn what was day and what was night because he was waking up multiple times, and he was still waking up multiple times. So at school, he showed up his overtiredness through those behaviors: disruptive, controlling, bossy with peers. So let's just think for a moment. Would school detention would get him into a reward chart system or a reward system? Would consequences, would reminders really help this sleep deprived child improve his behaviors? The answer is no, because it isn't until you address the underlying need that things start to improve a little bit. So, my question to you is, when you see your child's behaviors, when you see they're hitting, they're kicking, they're slapping, they're throwing, they're biting, are you just staying at the superficial behavioral intervention level with the consequences, warnings? If you don't do this, then I'm going to do this. If you're not going to have iPad, if you keep doing this, or reward charts? Or do you look at the holistic approach of seeing what's really driving that behavior? What's the protective or adaptive function that behavior is providing for the child, so you can address it from the root? Remember, I told you that all behaviors provide an adaptive and protective function or protective function. In this case, for Morgan, it was an adaptive function. That was his best attempt to adapt to a demanding school environment that required a lot from him, considering his sleep deprivation. He was doing his best with what he had. He was doing his best at school with what he had. He tried hard to follow instructions, but sleep deprivation kicked in and he couldn't follow instructions anymore. He wanted to have peaceful peer interactions, he wanted to make friends, but his sleep deprivation didn't allow him to have the capacity to hold space for the other kids and be patient with them because kids are kids and they're not going to be accommodating for him. They're not going to be accommodating for him. So the question is your children really able to follow your instructions, to navigate successfully the environment that you have for them considering their current needs? Marcela, but I don't know what the needs are. Before we go there, this is very important. There is something that these parents, Morgan's parents, did right. And it was that they were secure parents for him. They never became reactive. They never became scary for him. They didn't yell at him. They didn't spank him. They didn't shut down with him. They were just as sleep deprived as him, but they remained secure for him. Let's just imagine how his adaptability threshold would have been if he would have came from a reactive parenting environment, if he would have came from not just sleep deprivation but added stressors of being yelled at or being spanked or being ignored by parents or not being held emotionally when he was waking up in the middle of the night. I bet his behaviors would have been way worse, not just controlling and bossy, but maybe very reactive or shut down. So, my question for you is, and this is judgment free, we are all in different levels of awareness and capabilities as parents. Are your children seeing a secure parent right now? Are they seeing a parent who is able to remain regulated in their chaos? Or are they seeing a reactive parent sometimes and a secure parent other times, an ambivalent parent, an inconsistent parent? Are your children seeing an engaged parent or a shut down parent? Because yes, behaviors communicate needs, and there could be environmental factors like Morgan's case that could be contributing to your child's behaviors, but 100% how we show up for them influences the way they navigate life and the way they behave. It either makes or breaks the deal of their behaviors getting worse or getting better, because the foundation is always safety. If children feel safe, we have a good ground for them to start improving. And I'm gonna tell you in a little bit what happened, how Mona de la Hook helped this child. So if you are like Marcela, I try my best, but it comes to a point that I just react and yell and spank, or I just snap and yell. I don't spank, but I just snap and yell, or I shut down. You're not alone. All our clients in HIC parenting come to coaching because they are reactive and they want to break away from that reactivity and become secure parents. You are not alone. Parenting is not easy. And you know what? You don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there with the right guidance and system and support. I have a first step for you. If you're like, I don't know if coaching is for me, I've tried other things, I don't know, but you're like, but give me a glimpse of what it will be. I encourage you to access a free class where I show you the system, the parenting with understanding system to break away from reactivity and parent with peace. This is the same system that I teach my coaching clients in months, so you can have it yourself, and it is free. Now, if you need holding hand, help on the application of this system, that's where coaching works. That's where we come in as coaches in HIC parenting. But if you go through the class and you're like, hey, I think I can do this on my own, the class is so valuable. So to access this class, all you have to do is go to our Instagram at High Impact Club, or our other, that's my personal Instagram, or our corporate account at HIC Parenting on Instagram. Yeah, High Impact Club, HIC Parenting, and then DM us the word peace 25. Peace number 25, and then we will share the link to this free class. Or you can go to our website www.hicparenting.com, and then the link to access this class is there. So these are the steps that were followed to uncover Morgan's needs and will help you uncover your child's needs. It's a 4-step system, and then Mona de la Hook described it as the I.D.E.A method. I.D.E.A method. So I is inquiring about the child's history. She started asking history about sleep, about eating, about bowel movements, health history, stress history, if there is anything significant in the child's life, because that could be a contributing factor to today's behaviors. And then that's when she noticed the pattern of sleep deprivation. Second, D, determine the circumstances that contribute to the child's stress. So it is the sleep deprivation on top of the school demands. So that's what the contributing factor for Morgan's stress. E, examine triggers and underlying causes. The trigger for him was peer interaction because he was not able to be patient with peers. The trigger for him was to stay focused during homework time at school because he didn't have the energy to stay focused. And then no, hold on. That's E, examine triggers. And A is address developmental challenges. So he did have a developmental challenge from a baby. Since he was a baby, he wasn't able to learn to regulate his sleep cycle. That was a developmental challenge. He was 7 or 9 years old, and he was still waking up like a little baby every few hours in the night. That is a developmental challenge. So once we have these 4 things, we know the child's history, we know what's contributing to the stress, the added stress factor, what's triggering the stress, and then if there are any developmental challenges, from there and only there, we can develop a therapeutic support plan or a plan on how to help the child improve the behavior. There is no reward system or consequences or timeouts or spanking that could really help a child if we don't understand what's happening underneath their behaviors. All those things are punishment, they're detrimental to the child, and by the way, they're quick fixes. They may stop a behavior momentarily, but it will come back because the trigger and the underlying causes are still laying there. And if we add to all those causes, if the added stressor For Morgan, the added stressor was the school demands. But just imagine if the added stressor was just not the school demands, but the parents' reactivity, that creates a setup for failure for this child. I tell my clients this all the time because it's true. It's true. I record my children's behaviors and I've been recording them or journaling them since they were 10 months and they're 9 years old now. So I have 9 books of every day I write down what happened for them because that's the only way that we can track behaviors. Why is it important to track behaviors? To notice patterns. To notice patterns. Otherwise, you're going to see a bunch of puzzle pieces. You would think that your child just whines for everything and hits for everything and is angry about everything, when it could be about a very specific thing that you have not uncovered just because you have not tracked the behavior. I literally keep a journal in my bathroom, and every single night before I take my makeup off, I write down what happened. And then I write it this way, their behaviors, and then what helps me understand. And then I write it like this: how was their sleep the day before? How was their eating? Did they poop? Because when they're constipated, I notice that they fight more. If there is any sickness or health thing going on that they're battling, right before they get sick, they get really, really like tantrumy, melting down, demanding. And then if there was any added stressor, maybe today they have the pediatrician checkup, or we had an extra visit from grandma and that was unexpected, or we have I don't know, it was a hot day, any added extra stressor. And then recording that every single day allows me to notice patterns. I review their journal every week and I notice things. And I review every month and I notice even more things. For example, I noticed that every single Monday they were having a really hard time. And then now I'm not like, oh, they're so cranky. I don't know why. Now I am on Monday, they have a hard time because it's Monday. Don't you have a hard time on Mondays because it's Monday? Yeah. Your children might be the same. So now that we have a full picture and that we are secure parents is important, then we write down a plan on how to help our kiddos. And this plan has to come from the bottom up. So what does that mean? Our brain is divided in upstairs brain and downstairs brain according to Dr. Daniel Siegel. Downstairs brain is in charge of the emotional aspect of things and survival responses like fight or flight. An upstairs brain is more logical thinking, the one that helps us be humans and not act like animals, if that makes sense. So because we can control our impulses and we can use our communication avenues and we can have logical thinking and thinking about consequences, all those things are top down skills, meaning uppercase brain skills. If a child has an underneath challenge, we cannot solve their behaviors with top down strategies. With, okay, let's commit to you not like, for example, I was talking to a mom whose child she was hoarding food. She has an eating disorder. So she was trying to attack that behavior, solve that behavior by writing down written commitments from her daughter about eating correctly. When the underlying need is that she has an eating disorder and needs therapeutic support. There is no commitment that she's going to respect. And the parent was so frustrated and annoyed, and she felt disrespected of why her child was not following through with her written contract of eating right, because she couldn't. It wasn't that she won't, she can't. So that was a top down strategy that she was trying to apply for a bottom up problem, something that was living in her nervous system, in her survival response, in out of her control. So let's go back to Morgan's. How did he overcome this? With top down strategies? No, with bottom up strategies. They couldn't touch the disruption in class. They couldn't touch um, the behavior problems with peers if they did not fix first the sleep issues. Say they worked with a sleep specialist, and I don't know if he was on medication, not sure. And then they did therapeutic things to make sure that the sleep hygiene was better. No more iPad or screen until he fell asleep. No more carrying him in the car until he fell asleep. He was very sensitive to the parents' tone of voice and the kind of conversations that they were carrying right before bedtime. So not about talking about things that stressed out parents, because he was feeding off on the parents' nervous system. So they started making a routine that was as calming and as conducive to sleep as possible. And yes, yeah, he did have medication. Yeah. Now that I remember, I read that book last week. He had medication, uh, and then his sleep cycle started regulating. He started waking up less and less times during the night. And guess what happens with the behaviors at school? Started improving. They started improving, and that's when the professionals knew that they could start top down strategies, meaning uppercase brain strategies to help them learn skills to relate better with peers and to not be so disruptive in class. But that wasn't addressed until the underlying need was met. They started working on helping them relate better to peers. He was assigned an aide at school to help him relate with peers during the class, during research, and he was until he was trained to have successful relationships. But that would have been a total failure is if sleep deprivation would still be part of his life. The things that you've been doing with your child is not that your child is rude or too much or too strong willed to respond to things, or too autistic, too ADHD to respond to things. I said as a neurodivergent parent, none of that. Possibly is that you have been addressing behaviors with top down strategies, meaning with logical thinking strategies or punishment, reward systems, timeout, spanking, without addressing the underlying need. So I encourage you to use this four-step system, the idea. Let's review it real quick. I, inquire about child's history. D, determine circumstances that contribute to stress. E, examine triggers and underlying causes. And A, address developmental challenges. Write down a plan that will help them with these underlying needs, and then only then work on behavioral strategies to improve the behaviors. If this podcast episode rang the bell for you, will you share it with a friend? Share it with a friend right now. Share it with a parent who's been trying to look for ways to improve their children's behaviors, but they told you like nothing has worked. This will help them. And share with them. And remember that it only takes understanding of your needs and your child's needs to raise secure children. I'll see you next time.